Hello, everyone. Welcome to Be Evolved. It is January 2025. I'm so excited about this year. We are at Be Evolved going to be featuring 12 amazing experts this year who are going to absolutely expand your threshold of knowledge on how you can support your school-age child to learn and live well, which is our mission in the work that we do here at Evolved. So I actually met with Jenn in November of 2024, and Jenn Wert is here with us. Hi, Jenn.
Hi, Mary. Hi, everybody.
So happy to have you here because, we had a conversation. Jenn is a parent coach and she came into our life and shared her practice with us. We were so excited to learn from her, and I can't wait for you all to learn from Jenn today. So we're going to get right to some Q&A that we have prepared. We want to get to know Jenn a little bit and her practice. And of course, don't worry, we are not going to leave without giving you all kinds of ways to connect with Jenn. You can go to our show notes on the website and access any and all resources she's referencing. So first of all, I'm going to just allow Jenn to pop on here, and I'd love to know, please tell me a little bit about your background. How did you become a parent coach, and what inspired you to work with families?
Thanks, Mary. I'm so honored to be kicking off this big year for you guys. Thank you again for the invitation. In a nutshell, I grew up in a very big family, pretty judgmental family, and I was a highly sensitive kiddo. So I grew up to the tune of, why do you cry all the time? Why do you ask questions like that? Why do you do that? Just no one likes that. That kind of energy is how I grew up, sadly. And at the same time, I'm grateful for it because it has meant that my entire life has been committed to working with families, to define family a different way, to honor children. And so ultimately, this led to my getting my master's in education. I taught in the public school system for a long time, but even felt quite limited by that. I loved my work with families, so that has stuck with me. And from the classroom too, I will say, it was the social and emotional piece that was juiciest for me. Of course, I talked to parents about math scores and all of that, but I was teaching elementary school and so clear at a young age that what mattered most was connection, advocacy, communication, what was going on in these kids' hearts and how they related to others in groups or to themselves. So this was a very early on clear passion of mine. And for decades, I've been supporting families around and in social and emotional intelligence. I've done a ton of postgraduate training in it, ran a few different nonprofits to do with education. Of course, all of my work has been in these foundational years. So preschool, elementary school years before adolescence, because these are the years we are laying the tracks for our relationships and really for our kids' relationships as adults themselves in their teen years and then as adults. I was running girls leadership for the Midwest, their Midwest region, because I base out of Colorado, when COVID hit, Mary. And that's when I decided to launch my private practice. So now, since COVID, a lot of us pivoted then. I'm so grateful in that way for that opportunity. I have been parent coaching parents of young ones, ages 2 to 12. I'm a parent coach for Maven Clinic, the largest digital family health focused on women and children organization clinic in the world. And I have my own private practice, which is all of my work is about raising the collective consciousness, one family at a time.
That's just so beautiful. And it's really how it works, right? I mean, at Evolved, for example, I started my career as a special education teacher almost 28 years ago now. Crazy. But I came into the work at Evolved because I had this intention to create a place where families could go at any moment in their child's educational journey to have educators take a look at their child from a holistic standpoint, really looking at the academics, but also the social, emotional, and physical development of their child, both at home and at school. And the services that we've created here really do align with all of that. And I really love that your work has such an amazing depth to it because of the experience that you have brought into this work. And I agree, the years between 2 and 12 are so foundational. And we have a ed advisor here who taught all of us that as parents, we are learning and our children are learning. We're learning. And I don't know, as a parent with young children, that I ever really got that message loud and clear. I really thought I was supposed to come into all of this knowing something. I got the books. I'm like, okay, I'm going to read the books and I'm just going to follow the books and then it will all be okay. I also wanted to separate from some of the ways I was raised, which I think is very normal and natural. And it's really such a value since COVID. I think we're now expanding our ability to connect with professionals such as yourself to be able to say, actually, I'd like to kind of work on this. I'd like to really define how I want to parent, how I want to interact with my child, but I also want to learn a little bit more. I don't really know anything about these little guys. Maybe I'm a lawyer. Maybe I'm a doctor in some other field. Maybe I have a completely different type of training. And I can see that being really tremendously valuable. So I'd like to just kind of jump into some meat here that some of our families could maybe get into. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you kind of approach your coaching practice? Like, how do you talked about connection. I agree. It's so, so important. And yet it can be difficult sometimes to figure out how to connect with a little kid, especially if this isn't really where you live in your professional life, right? So how do you teach that to families and how do you establish some of those practices?
Yeah. Even as an educator myself, when I came into parenting pretty darn confident, right? But at about age 3, I was up against something with my daughter. She was potty trained, but then she wanted to go back to diapers. I'll just share. And I was flummoxed. I was just so confused. What could this mean? In any case, I only share that personal tidbit because that's when I found my parent coach. Even I have a parent coach to this day. I don't believe we can know. We can read and we can prepare and do the things, but we are meeting little humans that are new to the world, and each and every one of them is on their own path. So figuring out how to humble our busy adult minds and ourselves to meet them where they are, to support them and guide them along their path, that is the craft of parenting. It's not a science, it's an art, right? So it's a daily misstep and course correct and check in with yourself. And so that's where I'll get to answering your question. My coaching is really about upping self-awareness, to be honest. I hold up a mirror that we often can't hold up for ourselves. And I do this because honestly, oftentimes I'm air quoting because you can't see me on the podcast. Our kids' misbehavior is misinterpreted. It often has more to do with us and how we're showing up or not showing up than it does with maybe them. It's a relationship, right? So it's not one way. There are two people in every relationship. And so this is the basis of my work. I work with parents on looking at their own emotional self-regulation. How do they do that? What are their habits of mind? Do they tend toward judgment? For many of us, they do. We're humans. What's their inner critic like? How do they communicate? What kinds of language do they use? Because language is so powerful and we want to be the safest place for our children. And sometimes just the words we're choosing unconsciously, we mean well, we love them more than anything. The words can communicate something very different, something that's more closed, right? Or perhaps more black and white than we intend. So my work is working with parents on connecting to themselves because we cannot connect to others if and until we are really connected to ourselves. It has to do with shifting mindset, not a 180, just a little bit of a shift, of course, with the growth mindset in mind and one of acceptance. So we look at our children, each of whom are their own individual beings, And we slow down enough to be curious and find out who they are. That takes real presence. That takes slowing down. I've done so much work and training in different pedagogies that it's not formulaic. We are not meant to perform as parents as though we already have it all figured out. It's actually more about being more human and more humble than that. And B, my work is such a mix of the 3 decades of analysis and therapy I've had, combined with all of the training in the classroom and outside of the classroom. It's a varied, extensive repertoire, right, of my exposure and experience. But the thread that weaves it together is that I work with parents on prioritizing connection, humility, and curiosity. And these things look like teaching them really in practice with their children, who are beings, even though they're littler, they are definitely taller than these other beings. They are still human beings. So teaching them really how to practice active listening with them, clear boundaries with them. They need this. They want this. How do we bring in more levity? How do we, and when do we present co-collaboration for problem solving in our family dynamic? What does our validation and empathy really sound and look like? So it's bringing an intentionality, Mary, to parenting that isn't the norm in this fast and furious world in today in 2025.
True. It's true. But I love this word of intentionality. It's really one of my, every year when I have these yearly shifts, I write down words for the year. And one of them this year is intentionality. I find it to be so appealing, especially in this fast-paced world, especially at this point in my career, especially at this point in my life. It feels appropriate. And I think it's very attractive, right, to go through such an important role with intentionality, and how we all do that, of course, does require coaching. I think that's such an important word. And you've covered a couple of the questions that I have, and I'm sort of looking at one of our themes for this month is get to know your child at Evolves. We're really supporting families to do that work. And of course, this is really hard because kids are dynamic and they are moving and growing and developing. So as soon as you've got them down, as soon as you've got them potty trained, right, they're turning around and deciding they're not doing it anymore. And now you're completely at ground zero again with figuring this out. But, I guess I'll start with the top level question, then we can get into some details. But why do you think it's important for parents to actively get to know their child or children? And, even though they might feel like, listen, I birthed this child. I've known this kid since they were a baby. Like, I know better than anyone who they are. But why is it important to kind of keep engaging with that exercise of getting to know your child?
I love this question so much. And it is a testament to how aligned we really are, how excited I am to be on this podcast. So even in your name, Evolved, it's a fact that if we are parenting mindfully, the mind is present. The brain is there. The mind is present. If we are bringing mindfulness and consciousness into our parenting, we are in fact evolving right alongside our children. So we don't have a response before they're done asking their question, right? And a lot of us, we're moving so quickly that we do that. Of course, we know our children better than others. It's just a habit. It's a habit of ours where we are typically a little bit ahead of the person talking, especially if the person is shorter and smaller and maybe takes a little more time to put together their thoughts and ideas. We're typically ahead and respond really quickly. So the importance of slowing down and getting to know them, it's a reframe on the whole relationship. Really, children are, steal Michelle Obama's word, becoming. They are becoming all the time. They experience new things every single day. Every single day. So in our honoring that experience and allowing for it, we need to be open to who they are today and who they are the next day after they have now integrated whatever they saw or learned or experienced at school, in the world, with their sibling, with you, right? So allowing for and deepening connection is about really seeing who's in front of you, which speaks right to what I said earlier, being able to meet someone where they are, which is our job as conscious parents. And the tricky part, Mary, is that this means even if what we don't want to see is what we see, allowing for that, accepting that. Maybe I don't want a kid who makes a big deal out of a sandwich without the right jam, right? I mean, maybe that's just annoying. Maybe they have annoying habits. Dare we say our children might annoy us, right? I mean, we love them again to the end of the earth. Maybe we have different interests. Maybe we have a kiddo who is not into sports the way we are. I mean, there are a million examples, but if it's not what we wanted or we dreamt up or we saw or our parents told us we should pass down, whatever it is, we still need to be okay with it. And so this takes a practice, almost like meditation, of coming back to the here and now and seeing what you see. And that takes slowing down and listening and looking. Kids want to please us, right? I mean, it's attachment theory. They know what keeps us close and what pushes us further away, right? But we don't want to create a home environment where our child is having to read that all the time and play into that and raise people pleasers. That's not what I want. I don't think that's what you want. And so even in sharing worldviews or experiences and ideas, we need to be sure to have an accepting and open energy and choice of words to allow for them to have their own ideas, right? That's unconditional love. Today, honey, I hear that's what you think today. And tomorrow, you might have a different idea. I might ask you tomorrow. This is so interesting. Really humbling yourself to allow for whatever is. Yeah, that's authenticity and truth and what really leads to a deeper connection that will affect their teen years and their adult relationships and happiness.
Absolutely. Oh, that is just really, really wonderful. It makes me want to just be in your space and this work because it is obviously so valuable to see the possibility of that kind of connection. So let's go into maybe a little bit of that self-awareness for those of us who are listening. What are some signs that a parent might not be as connected to their child's inner world as they think? What are some things that we can be reflective on when we notice maybe our way of thinking, or we notice something that we're doing in our practice that would sort of trigger now us to think, oh, wait a second, I listened to Jenn and Mary talk this past week. I've got some good awareness right now. This is interesting. Okay. I'm not as connected as I thought I was. Interesting. Okay. Right. So what are some of those signs for us?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of the more obvious ones are kiddo who's either hiding the truth or hiding from you. These are very subtle things to notice, but they are signs of a bit of a disconnect, right? If they're real hesitant to share. Now, we know some people are more introverted, some are more extroverted. However, in the relationship I want, and I know you can have with your children when you're really connected, there can be, and I want there to be, a real openness and flowing between you so that they can feel safe to share whoever it is they are. That means their ideas, their view, their experiences, even if they're really different than yours. So if there's a shutting down or sort of an unwillingness to share, that's a little bit of a sign. You know, this relationship needs to be tended to. Yeah. It's not too late. It's just, I think that, I might have something to look at here in the energy I'm bringing, or the types of questions I'm asking, or when, or just, looking at it more closely. If you've got a people pleaser, especially for girls, this is really, really common, sadly, and not what we want to be raising. We want to be raising self-empowered, strong kiddos. So again, it's, as we are not to be performative, neither are our children. So for example, concrete example, obedience doesn't equate closeness, right? You can have a very obedient child who does what you say, and they might seem, air quote, easy or good. However, I might dig into that a little bit. Do they ever feel brave enough to have a different opinion or not want to do exactly what you are asking them to do? Now, I'm not encouraging defiance. There's a huge spectrum here, right? But being sure that your children are able to speak their minds and share their true selves. And I think too, something I notice with my clients again and again, part of the work is attuning to themselves. Like, oh, I knew that never felt right. I'll hear parents say this all the time, or, yeah, I know we've been doing it this way a long time. And even just in my voice, you can hear, but it doesn't, so helping them see, does that align with your values? Does that align with the home you want to create? To me, it seems a little misaligned, and I know you feel it. So helping parents notice, again, their own, what's happening inside of themselves. So upping the self-awareness so that they can parent from there, make decisions from there, hold boundaries more easily from there, because it's really clear what their intention is.
That makes a lot of sense. I have older children now, I have teenagers, but I can tell you right now, I'm already picking up some tips and some ways I'm going to be having conversations with them, because I feel like, listen, I think teenagers are a whole different, story in some ways, because they are in some ways supposed to be hiding. They're supposed to be separating and doing, some of their own things apart from you as a parent. I think that's very natural. But I think it's just really great to always know that you can set the reset button at any time, and you can always come back to the conversation and the table. And I love the idea of getting clear on your values. This is something I did in my business work this fall. I sat down and I have a bunch of women that I am very close friends with, and we do some spiritual work, and it's really non-denominational or anything, but it's just really great. Get in touch with yourself kind of stuff. And one of the exercises of the leader was to write down your values and start really making decisions from that place. And, as a business owner, as someone who has employees, as someone who, has children and a family and friends and sisters and, parents, and it just helps everything so much when you are so clear on your values, when you write them down and you're always coming back to them. This is the place you're making those decisions from, right? And I tell my kids that too all the time. I say, just write them down, and it helps you to know what you're going to be doing, right? So parenting what you're teaching is really very similar to that, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So much so that, when the practice is really, really woven into your days, I like to see when kids start to just be able to tell you, wait, why can't I do that? And then the parent can say, well, they can begin to start to share the value, but then the kiddo says, oh, right, we value gratitude. Okay, I got it. And they walk away because they know, not from being lectured, but being shared with, right? And being a part of an experience and a dynamic in a home that just reeks of the values. It's very clear again and again and again. Yeah, it brings an ease, definitely.
Yeah, it kind of makes that parenting, like the difficult parenting, become a lot easier. I was finding, I guess it was maybe now a couple of years ago, I had a moment where I felt I was nagging a lot with the kids, and I just put on our refrigerator the words that equated to our values. The kids actually helped me come up with them. And then we just put them on the fridge. And every time something was sort of off, I would go, there you go. This is what's happening. So it really helped me a lot, because I didn't, and it was also great because the kids came up with stuff that, like, we allowed them to sort of share what was valuable to them that maybe isn't necessarily valuable to me, but they're part of the family. So they get to contribute to some of those values, which I think is fun as they get older. Yeah. So let's get to some practical components here. So exciting. So I have asked you in, preparation for this for 5 practical tips for parents to better understand their children and deepen their relationship. So any specific activities that can help parents uncover their child's unique personality, interests, needs, or how can parents create a safe space for children to share their thoughts and feelings. So I'll let you cover however many you can get to. But I'm sure if people are really interested in all this work, we're going to make sure we get in touch with Jenn to access some of her work. But give us some practical tips, please. We can't wait to learn.
Okay. So in thinking about this, I think mine were a little more mindset oriented. However, I will throw in some practical examples as we go. Hopefully that'll work for now. One, first and foremost, always in my work is learn to tune in to yourself. So you know your triggers. You can name your feeling and you know how to regulate yourself. It sounds like I may not be answering the question, but I am, because when you are connected with yourself in that way, you're able to connect more deeply with your kids. Practical example, sharing, right? Dinner sharing or whatever. It's a good time for your family. Sharing a high, a low, and a silly every day, or whatever it can be, a rose, a thorn, a stone, but you're sharing vulnerably with your children and you're creating a space where they can also be vulnerable and share a low and I would encourage you to incorporate feeling words with them. So not just the little story, but then how did it make you feel? But you also sharing. Because that in any relationship, right? If only one person's vulnerable, it doesn't feel so safe. So it's a matter of coming off that pedestal and being a little messy and showing them, here's my mistake today and here's how it felt, right? Not always having to be so put together and positive, but being really human with your kiddos. And we do that better when we're tuned into ourselves. 2 is just listen more than talk. For all of us, I have teens too. We talk a lot as parents, right? And it's better to show than to tell. And reflective listening where you're actually really with your kids and repeating back, this is what I heard. Is that right? And checking in is so empowering and powerful for the relationship. A fun way to do this next one is make up a story together with your kiddo. So you're on a walk or you're on a drive, you do the first line, then they do the next, and then you do a next. It's just a little peek into the way their mind works, right? And what they're thinking about and what's juicy for them that week in that grade, right? And again, knowing that can change next week, right? And next year. That's a fun way to build stories together back and forth. This speaks to number 3, which I would say is really embracing curiosity and acceptance and learning about them on the daily. So open-ended questions, trying to avoid whys and using how much more often. How does it feel to swing for a half an hour straight? How does that feel in your body? I mean, get on their level, right? How does it feel to not be asked to play that? How did that feel? Really curious, not that you're looking to find a problem and solve a problem, but you're just wanting to learn about them and how things feel and their body and how their mind works. Spending quality time with your kids without an agenda. So the only agenda being natural connection, nothing else, even if it's 10 minutes a day. You could set the stopwatch, right? I was a single mom when mine was little, and I would have something on the stove, and that was the only time during the day we overlapped. I would just set the timer. You have something on the stove, 10 minutes. I'm yours, and letting them lead. What do you want to do? And it didn't matter. I don't want it to matter if you're interested in doing that. I want it to be you being curious about who they are and coming into their world. So if they're already drawing, they might say, well, I'm drawing. Go, oh, is it okay if I watch? That kind of humility. And then you sit by them. And they may or may not share out loud. It will come if you slow it down and you give the 10 minutes. Do you want me to teach you how to draw an eye, Mom? Sure. What do I need here? A pencil, right? Just follow them. Or you can sit quietly and watch them. Or you can go run around the block, whatever it is they want to do. But quality time with the only goal being to connect. And then I would say modeling self-compassion, self-love, self-advocacy. And we do this all day long. So it's that show versus tell, right? When your boundaries being crossed, imagining that you are your fourth grader, and how would you want them to handle it if someone crossed their boundary? And it's putting on that beginner's mind, Mary, right? So maybe saying, wait, you're all talking to me at once, and I feel really overstimulated and maybe overwhelmed. So we take a breath. I would like to ask that you go one at a time, that you speak to me one at a time. This is setting a boundary and showing them how they might at school, if people are bombarding them, say, wait, please, I can't hear you when you're all talking, go, right? And showing them how that looks and sounds. I just made that one up on the fly, but these are the kinds of things, how you model taking care of yourself in groups, in the world, in relationship. I also think they make some really good pre-made question games, to pull out a dinner or leave on the table, and you just pull a fun question. Who would you have lunch with this weekend if you could? Someone who's not alive or who is alive. They have all kinds of fun questions for families. And I think those are a really fun way to get to know each other. One more, I just have to say, I could go on forever. Reading together. And I don't mean just banging out the chapters. I mean, reading and discussing the characters' feelings and how it affects you to read that, how it affects them to read that. If it's a tricky part of a story, asking questions. So not just the reading, but the pausing to really discuss and share as you go, not rushing through, but really embracing that time together. It will tell you a lot about your kiddo.
Oh, yes. I love that. I remember actually having those cards at the dinner table. I liked them too. They were really fun to learn about myself. I'm like, oh, who would I like to have dinner with? This is fun. So I could see how kids would really enjoy that as well. So those are all amazing tips. And I believe you when you say you could go on for a long time with them. That's so wonderful. So let's get to a bit of a different way of talking about all of this. So, there's a lot of challenges that parents have when raising children, right? It is a challenging job. We hear a lot about this, actually. There's a lot. If you really want to think that parenting is really hard, you can. It's definitely available to you. So, when parents kind of come in, I imagine you're inviting them, maybe to think about that a little differently. And maybe there are some sort of, missteps that parents might make initially when they're trying to see this new way of connecting. Oh, wait, I can connect with my child. This is different. This is sort of an interesting way of going about this, right? And, you can speak to anything I just said, but really, what I want to also get at is just as parents, let's say we're like, oh, this is a good idea. I really like this idea of connecting with my kids. I think I want to do that a little bit more. What are some, missteps that you see parents maybe making as that idea comes forward? Like, oh, I think I'm going to do all this. Let's try. I don't know if that's the best way to phrase the question, but, any response to what I just said? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that when we want to connect, it's important to consider the shift of energy that we want to bring and maybe sort of new. I don't know, sometimes parents want to connect and then they go in the way that they always have before, same language, closed versus open questions. The intention is there. I want to connect. I want to know, but the questions can be answered in a closed question, 1 or 2 words, right? Yes, no. And then the conversation feels over and that can be frustrating. And they even come back to me or they come to me and they say, well, I ask these questions, but I'm not getting anything in return. So it's a matter of shifting, again, the mindset, the language, and the energy behind it to allow for a different way. So a lot of times parents are coming in with directed questions versus open. They may come in with trying to connect, but it's very rushed. And that's not when connection unfolds. There needs to be spaciousness and and wait time and patience. So if we have the check off the box energy, I'm going to do this with my child or ask them this question to connect, they're going to feel that. Kids are little Jedis. I mean, they feel the energy almost more than the words they know. So we have to allow for an open sort of flowing time between us, whether we're lying together at night or we're snuggled up after the school day. And in that same spirit, oftentimes parents, when kids are having big emotions, so they're way up here in their dysregulation, they then in that time try to connect or figure out what's going on or why, or right. And in no way can any child, really any person, go there at that time when the emotions are that big, right? Because we go to our limbic system. We're back in our lizard brain and we're not in our wise mind. We're not regulated. So that's a very common misstep. I want to connect. And I was asking and she kept screaming and right. And that's just, they can't. So that's where it comes back to us again, have to hold space, tend to ourselves and our own dysregulation, because when they get dysregulated, we get dysregulated. So tending to yourself during that and to them, being there to empathize, validate, but mostly quiet and letting them kind of ride their wave, knowing that you're right there and waiting either until they're on their way down to inquire or try to find out what's going on, or even hours later. Sometimes they need even more time before they're ready to share. But asking during dysregulation is a common misstep in trying to connect. Another one is learning to take a break or letting them take a break when dysregulation's happening, but then not circling back. Saying, well, we'll talk about this later. It's too much for me right now. I need a minute. Okay, good boundary. But if you don't come back, that's a whole nother mess, right? Or if you let the kiddo, I need space, and they storm off. Okay, here you need space. There you go. And then never bringing it up again, right? That's a real missed opportunity for connection. Whether it's repair that needs to happen, repair is golden, or a conversation that just couldn't happen before because everyone was really dysregulated. How can we be curious and soft and learn about each other, but why those feelings were so big? Not even why. I see I tend to not use why, but how we got there. What happened that created those feelings in us? So we can, again, understand each other better. I think too that a lot of parents these days overschedule their kids and look to fill their time. And some of this I'm finding is they believe that's a way to connect. Well, I want to give them this opportunity and I'm right there cheering for them on the sideline, when really that racing around from activity to activity, signing them up for things is not what I'm talking about. The slowing down and just being together, right? And kiddos need time to process all the new of their experience every day. They need time to problem solve, be creative and bored and connect. And that happens again in the spaciousness and the quiet and in the presence, not on the sideline, not when you're cheering them on at all of the activities. The activities are great. And if we can expose kids to different ones to help them find what lights them up, wonderful. And we need to have a balance between those inhales and the exhales, because the exhales are really the times where connection happens.
Makes a lot of really good sense. I can tell you, I definitely have been a student of yours in my parenting journey, because I remember learning about the zones of regulation and the ruler method, right? And this was all sort of something maybe in the 2000s that were sort of available. And, understanding, oh, right, I can't teach the child anything when they're tantruming or when they're losing their minds or when I'm losing my mind. To be honest, I cannot have a conversation right now. I've just got to go and lose my mind for a minute, and then I'll come back to you. Because parenting little kids and keeping them safe and clothed and fed and keeping all the things in the house and doing laundry and doing your job is very overwhelming at times and can be very stimulating for us, right? So that all makes really good sense, but it's certainly helpful to hear that. And I think that it's an often overlooked gem that parents can really benefit from. So, a lot of parents struggle. I know this is definitely me too. And so I empathize, but many parents struggle between this idea of being an authoritative person in their child's life, a guide, these are the things that are going to set you up for success in life. We need to do these things. This is the way it has to be. And connection, following your child. And is it true that they're really opposing? Is it sort of also something that you can negotiate? Talk to me a little bit about some of those challenges.
Well, this is the $1 million question. It's that striking that balance is, I think, of all the questions parents bring to me, is the most common and the biggest and one of the best. That is what makes this job so tricky and so difficult. And yes, it's so rewarding and it's such a gift. Striking that balance of holding the guardrails and being the guardrails and also flowing with them, things we've talked about, prioritizing connection at the same time, is deep work. It's deep work. And I think you said that they were opposing, or you were asking, and I will say they are absolutely not opposing. Absolutely not. In fact, they are sisters. My hope is they are woven together in your practice every day. Kids need guardrails. They need to be clear about the boundaries. They need things to bounce off of. That makes them feel safe. And these guardrails, these boundaries, I hope are based on clarity around your family values and what you want your legacy to be, what you want to pass down. And that's about it. The rest is your child finding their way within these guardrails. Right? Which asks of us acceptance, empathy, validation. And doing that all at once is really hard work. That's why it's the hardest job in the world. It takes slowing down. It takes a lot of self-awareness, remembering your values. It's where my work starts with every family that comes on board. We start with their values. Let's back up here, slow down, figure out what those are so we can be true to them day in and day out. It's noticing what comes up inside when our kiddos are acting in a way that we didn't foresee or we don't understand or we're confused by. Is it fear? Does it bounce us back to something from our own childhood? This happens naturally often. Am I projecting something on this to having it mean more than it might mean? Part of my work too is helping parents understand, like normalizing, right? Behaviors and interpreting what their kiddos' behaviors mean. Does it mean we need more boundaries? Does it mean we need to be more flowy? It's this constant dance and balancing act of the two, because they go hand in hand and they make up sturdy parenting.
Yeah, it really resonates. It really does.
This is the work. Yeah.
The balance it's supported by your work, that balance. I can almost see the fulcrum in the middle and you sort of holding our hands in the middle to try to figure out, given what's happening, which lever we need to press a little more on or less on. Mm-hmm. I think that's really interesting. And of course, when you're co-parenting, by the way, that is a whole nother situation, because when you have two minds coming into the mix and you are trying to sort of negotiate some of those relational pieces, I imagine that's also part of the balance that you're working on. I know my husband and I have been very open with anyone who will listen about the fact that we've endeavored in parent coaching all along the way. I'm almost with my first kid at 18. So I feel like I'm kind of hitting a milestone here. And I'm like, well, that's only successful because we've gotten a lot of support along the way. And I think that's what makes it so exciting to share your work with our clients, because I know for a fact that you need to have a really deep bench of professionals along with you as you are parenting your kids. And it's so important to have that. So yeah. What do you think about the co-parenting piece?
Yeah, well, I think that in a family, everyone brings their own natural strengths, right? And every person in the family adults and kiddos have areas of where they're working on growing, right? Areas of growth. And it's up to us in all of those relationships and that web of relationships to honor what everyone brings, what everyone's working on, how everyone is evolving all along each other at different rates and pace and right. And that is respect. I mean, that's when you can really honor each other like that. We can lean less on the obedience as being proof of respect, because actually one day very soon they're going to be bigger than you and not fear you and do something different if we didn't let them tell us their opinions, right? Earlier on and consider them and then either disagree or agree or change and with two parents, some are better at that than others. And so we need to lean on each other and support each other. And I think coming back to the values, when we have shared values in co-parenting, that often is the way back to that unified approach. You know what? We really want this for our dynamic. This is what we want to create in our home. And we really want to raise kiddos who do this. These are the most important top three. So which way do we need to lean? You know, we bring different knowledge and skill set, but what really matters here can really help.
Oh yeah. That exercise is absolutely such an anchor. I find it to be a huge anchor for a lot of the work that happens in those relationships. So, thank you for that. That's such a good reminder of that one. Okay. So let's get to some resources. And I know you're going to share some of the programs that you have, but also just, how can also families learn more about your coaching practice? Obviously, we're going to have, don't worry, everyone, you don't need to grab a notebook yet. We'll have everything listed on our show note page. So you'll be able to access everything Jenn's about to talk about. But yes, please share all of the good things that people can access.
Yes. So I would say being January 2025, the first thing I'll mention is I do one big virtual series a year, a parenting series, and it starts January 13th. So it starts in a few days. There are 4 nights. I'm doing this one this year in collaboration with a holistic pediatrician that I really admire, Dr. Allie Levine in Fig Pediatrics. You'll find it in the show notes. There's just a click to register. It's 4 evenings, 2 in January, 2 in February. I'll be leading the first 3. It's about really nurturing connection ahead of the teen years so that it's really in place before adolescence. And the 4th night will be Dr. Allie talking about really the physiology and the science between everything I taught before. Why are these practices so important? And the science behind that neurologically in our nervous systems, in our kids' nervous systems. So I'm excited about this one. I do one a year, like I said, so get signed up. And then back to what Mary said, I truly believe that parents all need support. We can read great books and watch great feeds on Instagram and get ideas from friends, but to have a coach to bounce off what you're actually practicing and working on is so important in your evolution and your growth and your learning as a parent, which you're doing right alongside your kiddo. So find a coach that resonates with you. If you're at all interested in talking more with me, I would be happy to talk with you. And again, in the show notes is a free consult where we hop on and meet each other one by one, and we can see each other, chat about your family, the patterns, what you're wanting to bring more consciousness to, what pieces of it feel a little disconnected, right? And we'll see if it's a fit. If it is a fit, the way I work is you come into a 3-month container, because this kind of learning and practice is not overnight. It's not a checking a box activity or task that could be done one and done. It's not like that. So I work with clients at a minimum for 3 months, and that's when we can really shift the mindset. So we again start with values, and from there, we work on really identifying, planning how to bring more consciousness to your parenting, to your decision-making and actions. And the third part is really implementation. We work on that. And there's obviously woven through it a lot of self-care that I work on in a customized way with everyone, depending on what they already know. We work on repair because we're never doing it exactly right. So what happens when we don't? And that's sort of how the 3 months are laid out. You have 24/7 access to me for spot coaching throughout the 3 months. There's group office hours on Thursdays during lunch. So it's a whole membership, and I'm with you on your team truly for those 3 months at a time. Some extend and do 6, and some then just do follow up with me as needed. So that's how I work in a nutshell. The links are all in the show notes for the free consult and then for this upcoming virtual series. One of my favorite books, I'll just say, is The Conscious Child by Dr. Shefali. It's really good and very much aligned with the work that I do with families. So to have a coach hold you accountable to these practices is key. Because we can read, and it's like a fire hose when you go on the internet, or even reading a book is a lot at once. But then who can you bounce these practices off of? This I tried, it didn't work. This I tried, and it went a way I didn't expect. And this happened. Who's going to celebrate and give you the next level of connection that you can then seek with that child? So it's a live. Coaching is just live support, right? So you can keep reading and listening as you wish. Having a coach really holds you accountable and helps you ensure that you are shifting your mindset, becoming more self-aware, and deepening your connection with your kiddos.
It's so beautiful. I love listening to you, and I understand your intentionality is so clear. And I really am so excited that our families are able to listen to you and become acquainted with your work. I'm going to come to the January sessions. I have an 11-year-old is my youngest, and I'm really excited to learn about some of the topics that you're talking about. So I will be there, and I hope to see many of you all listening there. And I am so excited to just continue this journey and make sure that we all have all of the resources that we need to make sure that our children are learning and living well. So we'll kind of end it with a fun personal question, as I asked you before all of this. And here it is. If you could give just one piece of advice to your younger self as a parent, what would it be?
To myself as a child.
To yourself as a parent. So if you're speaking now to your younger self as a parent of a young child, what would that advice be at this point in your parenting journey?
To myself as a younger parent with younger kids, I would say to step back more often, even though I feel like I did, step back even more often. You can't do it enough to be able to really see your kiddos. So stepping away, I'm a highly sensitive person myself. So I tend to get involved in their emotions. And so for me, I would encourage myself to trust more that the stepping back will serve my child best by allowing for some space for her to have her emotions, because she's going to be okay, to trust that I can hold that space without getting involved emotionally. That's hard work. I work on it every day.
Really resonates with me too, because I'm a teacher and I like nice evidence of learning. It's so nice to get, when you're a teacher and they pass the test or they ace the test. It's such a gratifying situation. So that really resonates with me. And I don't know who else listening that resonates with, but there's something really gratifying about a child coming back to you and saying, "Oh, that was such a great lesson, Mom. I'm going to totally do that." But it doesn't really happen all that often that way. But sometimes they show you. I mean, that's definitely possible. But yeah, I think it's also very helpful. I remember having a conversation with our parent coach, my husband and I, about that being a part of my journey, because he'll say, "You need to stop talking at a certain point." That's what he would say to me, stop talking at a certain point because they're not listening to you anymore. And I didn't realize that's where that self-awareness comes in, right? Like I didn't realize I was actually doing that more from an anxiety standpoint around they're not getting this lesson. I want them out of the pain. I don't want them to be there. That was sort of where I was coming from. Him hearing the reason why or how I was doing that was very helpful because then he could understand me more. But then also I was able to be more self-interest. Yeah. In adjusting myself in that regard and just knowing that is it. Sometimes, you're working on something, but you don't really know like what you're really working on. Right. It's like, it does shift in that way with coaching. It's very interesting. So I really value what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I'd given that answer. It's about talk less, just less words. That's what I would have said. But even today, my teenager said, you've been talking for 10 minutes. Can we just listen to the song now? And I'm like, but it was so important what I'm trying to tell you. In my head, I said that. And I said, yeah, sure, honey. And I thought, I just talk way too much. I need to allow more spaciousness and quiet for her voice. Yes. It's true even in the teen years, but I'm able to take that. She can say it to me respectfully and I can take it because of all of the times that happened. And she knew I was a learner and I am a learner right beside her. I was always a student in parenting from the foundational years, from the younger years, where that interaction was healthy and clear. And she asked for what she needed, self-advocated, and I could humble myself. And instead of taking it personally or being offended, I said, sure, honey. In my head, I was like, it was so important.
Yeah. Yeah. If you saw me, I'm just doing these like silly, hands in my head because I've been there. I've been in that thought process before. Well, oh my goodness, we could talk probably for hours. This has been such an amazing podcast episode for everyone. And I appreciate you so much, Jenn. Thank you so much for being here with us. So as mentioned, everyone, we will put everything that we've discussed in the show notes. Please access them. Please come to the parent workshop that's happening. And we'll also be so happy to hear from you. If you found this helpful, please put, comment to us, email us, let us know some of your thoughts. We'd love to just carry this forward. So thank you so much again, Jenn, for being here.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's been an honor.